Howdy, all. We have to do a show earlier today because of some scheduling conflicts. I know that I'm going to be up in Toronto on Wednesday and Friday, so stay tuned for scheduling for the next few days. When I'm up there and Ak is previously committed to something and taking care of stuff, it's tough for us, but we'll try to get shows to you. And there's obviously a lot of news going on in the hockey world, but let's start with something you wanted to talk about, Ross.
Yeah, so tomorrow night, I think it's at 10 o'clock, ESPN has a 30 and 30 for Ric Flair, the Nature Boy Ric Flair. And, say what you want about the guy. He's a larger-than-life character. We know he's not, like, the greatest human being on earth. Like, we get that, right? I mean, it's professional wrestling. It's funny because there are some really great, nice, kind people that come out of wrestling, a lot of them. We're not expecting them to be that based on the kind of business it is. And look, I mean, he just had a big-time health scare, and we're all sort of happy that he's recovered, or at least doing better. And now he's, going around. He's got a book out. And so he's worthy of this kind of coverage because at the end of the day, like my dad, when he watched wrestling as a kid, Gorgeous George drew him in. And Ric Flair is a copy of Gorgeous George, except a more physical, a more trolling kind of copy of – and look, wrestling-wise, he's great. Ric Flair was the king of over-exaggerating a fall, and to the point of comedy, which would make you laugh. The woos, we love them, we hate them. I always tell people, I wrote about it on NHL.com. When I first heard the woo at a hockey game was actually at the Stanley Cup in Carolina. And he's from Carolina, but then it spread like wildfire after that. And because, again, this is Ric Flair. Like, he is a big deal.
Yeah.
I'll even go so far as to say when he finally wrestled Hogan, when they finally had when they were both in the WWF at the time, at the same time, I went and saw them at the Spectrum, myself and Doug Cataldo, who I do the Sportsology website, and we loved it. It was great. I believe Hogan won that night, but they kept trading pinfalls, during that whole tour. But it was great because, that was like the matchup everybody always wanted to see. And, that's, again, Ric Flair, it's fun. All these guys are great athletes. Like, you never want to take that away from them because they all could have played other sports. A lot of them did play other sports. Like, Randy Macho Man Savage was a baseball player. And
I saw Flair, and I think it was NWA wrestling. It was the one that was in that played in Toronto and played in Southern Ontario a lot. He was always on because back in the day when I started watching wrestling when I was a kid. It was funny. They had the 9 o'clock, the midnight show on WOR, WWF, with Vince McMahon and Bruno Sammartino as the hosts. This is, I think,
just before Vince and Bruno would do it. There's actually Antonino Rocca, who my dad used to watch as a kid, would do it with Vince. And he had a very pronounced accent, and as a kid, I probably made fun of it too much. But
this is. I think Vince's father was still alive at that point.
Vince's father was still alive.
He was an announcer, and believe me, not as pumped up and jacked up as he is now. And he looked like a normal thin guy. But that was Saturday night, and Saturday afternoon was the wrestling out of that was on like the Hamilton station, and Flair, the Crippler Stevens, Greg Valentine, those guys were all in that.
I think we were watching that off of TBS back in the day.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. He was the master of what I call the pratfall. He'd take this ridiculous punch from somebody, and he'd act completely unaffected. Then all of a sudden, he would just go butt over tea kettle and fall.
Yeah.
And it was just
sometimes he would do that over the top rope too, which is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, no, he was great, and he was the master of the microphone before The Rock, before Jericho, before Roddy Piper. It was Ric Flair. So I mean, he was.
Yeah,
he was great.
Four Horsemen without Ric Flair. Like that's the bottom line.
No, and he was also the master of sort of the backstab because he would always, him and like I don't know if he ever did it to like the Andersons or whoever, but he was always.
Yeah, he did eventually. Yeah.
He always, he was always somebody like, hey,
He was always your friend, and then 3 weeks down the storyline, 4 weeks down the storyline, he always would do something egregious. And so that was Ric Flair's way. But he was a great wrestler, one of the best workers, because you got to really be great to make the other guy look good too. And so that was another thing. And I don't know, a 1,000,000-time world champion. So I'm happy. I'll be watching.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. And by the way, today is election day in the U.S. for some smaller municipalities, mayors. I know there was a governorship in Virginia, so
governorship in New Jersey. It's a big deal.
Well, please. I mean, we know how that's going to go after that tub of lard that blowhard that's been there. And I'm that guy supposedly was on my side of the political spectrum, but not really.
He's on nobody's side.
Yeah, he's on nobody. He's on his side. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So go out there and vote. I don't, party affiliation, whatever. Just go out and participate in the process. I know which side I'm going to vote for, but whatever. Okay, let's get started. Hello Hockey Roll. Today is Tuesday, November 7th, 2017.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Now, I was able to call in yesterday and got a few minutes in on the Matt Duchene trade, but I want to just, since it's fresh in our memories, I want to go over it a little more in depth and give my perspective on it. Now, Russ, I look at from the Colorado perspective, they got 6 young assets. Hammond is a salary dump, which is typical of Ottawa. But I
still think they're going to trade him. I don't think they have any use for him. But we'll see.
Right, that may be right, because they signed Bernier, and Bernier's making almost $3 million as a backup. So I can't see them having a third stringer making $1.3 million. It doesn't add up for that team. But okay, so they get Girard, they get Kamenev, they get Bowers, they get a 1, 2, and 3 from Ottawa.
Was it 1, 2, and 3, or just a 1 and a 3?
No, a 1, a 2, and a 3. They got a 2 from Nashville. They got a 1 and a 3 from Ottawa. So they got 6. They got 3 prospects, 3 draft picks, and Hammond. For Duchene. That's a pretty good haul in terms of numbers. Now I'm just, of course, being me, I'm going to take the negative on all these teams. The negative here for Colorado is they did not get an A prospect. They did now you can dispute that, and that's why I'm saying. But from my point of view, I mean, I think Girard is an NHL defenseman. I don't know much about Bowers, but you think he can be an NHL second, third line center.
Yep.
Kamenev has been regarded for a while, but he really hasn't shown what people thought he was going to be. But he could make it.
He had 21 goals last year. He does have speed. He does have some physical ability.
Right.
He's not great in his own end, and I think that's what's held him back.
But they didn't, and I'm looking at both teams here. They didn't get Shabbat. They didn't get Colin White. They didn't get Logan Brown. They didn't get Fiala. They didn't get any of these grade A prospects. And when you trade a guy who is probably, your second best forward after Nathan McKinnon, you would think that they would get more than numbers, that they would get quality. But they apparently went for quantity rather than quality.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so there's a couple of things at play here. Right now, while I think it's a groin injury, we're waiting for Tyson Jost to come back. He will replace Matt Duchene. Like, I'm not even sure there's a big difference there down the road, because while Duchene may be a little better of a goal scorer for sure, Jost plays more of a 200-foot game. Mm-hmm. So I think right there they knew they had a replacement for Matt Duchene in their own system. They watched him play already this year. We all agreed Jost looks like an NHLer. Sure. So, and that's from drafting. Actually, if you think about it, the last 2-3 drafts, Colorado has done very well for themselves. So yeah. I think even if you say worst case scenario of the 1, 2, and 3, if they get 2 players out of that, they'd be kicking themselves. I'm not kicking themselves. They'd be clicking their heels. They would be happy as could be. Even if they get 1 great player out of that, that's fine. But I think they can get 2. And Hammond, I'm not sure about, but I'm sure about Shane Bowers. Shane Bowers will play in the NHL. And I think he'll play there sooner than some people think. I think he'll be there in a couple of years because he already seems to think the game like an NHLer. He He's a guy that plays, and he's also a guy that plays a 200-foot game. He's also a guy that has really good offensive ability. Not a superstar. I mean, look, Duchene's got more offensive ability than anybody else we're talking about. But again, you have to look at, they got Sam Girard, who I believe is an A prospect. Okay. And again, even if he's your second pair guy because you had Tyson Barrie, you have now improved the power play, even with Matt Duchene being gone, because now you've got Sam Girard on your second power play. And that's great. That's going to help Colorado. For all these people, I even saw some tweets yesterday thinking maybe Colorado will start to sink in the standings. I'm not sure about that. I think when Jost is back, I think they could be still where they are. I don't think it's that great a drop-off.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think the deal has less to do with the fact that they had somebody to replace Duchene than the fact that they needed to get a big haul for Duchene, who clearly did not want to be there, and the organization wanted to move on from him. And based on some of the packages that were reportedly offered for him earlier on in the process, I don't think this is – I mean, they got numbers. They maybe got depth. They did get a defenseman. But when you're talking about, making a deal with Montreal and getting Sergachev, or making a deal with Ottawa and getting Shabbat, or making a deal with the Islanders and getting – or Columbus and getting Ryan Murray, or the Islanders and getting Pulak or Hamonic. I mean –
but here's the thing. You're valuing bigger guys over smaller guys, because every guy that you're telling me is a bigger guy that has offensive ability, and Pulak's yet to prove it. And I like Pulak, but he's yet to prove it. But you're just going bigger guy over smaller guy, and that.
Well, I mean, for me, it's not size. It's the name, the names that were brought up in connection with him. I mean, maybe it's a coincidence that they were all bigger. I
remember Girard's got 3 points in 5 games. Like it's not like he's not putting up any numbers. Yeah. I think again, you've got a top 4 defenseman. I think Colorado did well for themselves. They could do great for themselves if all this pans out, and if a lot of it doesn't pan out, then they lost a little bit. But again, we have to remember Matt Duchene wanted to leave, and they had to take a deal at some point. So I think, at least from the perspective of scattergun approach, Sakic did well, because there's a lot of things that could go right for him in this trade.
And now the onus is on Colorado's scouting staff, because they'll have 6 draft picks in the first 3 rounds. So, with an additional 1, 2, and 3, which is big. Now the team I have the least amount of problem with is Nashville in this one.
I think Nashville did well. They got a player. They signed him up long term. They've got a 1-2 punch now down the middle, which is way better than anything they've had in recent memory. Like I said, no slight to Mike Fisher. Yeah, but these are 2 bigger, good, really good offensive players.
The funny thing is they've sort of reversed images here on Pittsburgh from last year, because Pittsburgh, the main reason that Pittsburgh won last year, even without Letang, was because up the middle they had Crosby, Malkin, and Bonino as the third line center. I'm not saying that Ryan Johansson and Turris are as good as Crosby, Malkin, but you look at them now up the middle. They've got Johansson locked up. They've got Turris locked up for 6 years at $6 million, and Bonino as the third line center. If they get the goaltending that they got last year from Rene, they could come back and get to the finals again. They're really set up in the next, I'd say, 2 or 3 years to make a continuing concerted run at the Stanley Cup. So that I have to tip my hat to David Poile on that.
And again, Jeff Keelty having this depth, building this depth through the draft, they still have more than enough defensemen, don't they?
Yeah, that's true. The team I have the most problem with is Ottawa.
Okay.
Because I can see through this right away, and I mentioned this yesterday, and I'm going to expand on it a little bit right now. Is Duchene the best player in this deal? Sure. Did they want to sign Kyle Turris to a 7 or 8 year deal that he was willing to sign for less in Nashville? I don't know. Ottawa didn't. Apparently, Ottawa, every offer that Per Dorian was interviewed on Sportsnet yesterday, and there were other indications that said that Turris never made his representative never made an offer to the Senators that wasn't 7 or 8 years. So he was.
All right, so he was looking for 7 or 8.
Yeah, he was amenable to 6 with Nashville, but he wanted 7 or 8 from Ottawa. So
Well, I mean, but again, that makes sense because they're the only team that could give him 8.
Right, that's true. Right, and maybe seven was the compromise.
Correct.
So, but in this instance, they get Duchene. I don't think Duchene is as good a center as Turris is. Remember, Duchene was drafted as a center, played early career as a center, got moved to the wing. Some people, I remember when Patrick Waugh was there, he got moved to the wing because he was not what Waugh considered good enough defensively. Okay, so he can play both positions. I think he can replace Turris. Will he be as good as Turris up the middle? Yet to be seen. Let's just say that take in the as part of the argument that Duchene is marginally better than Turris. You look at the package that Ottawa gave up: a 1, a 3, and Bowers. And to my mind, the main motivation here was Duchene has another year in his contract, and Turris was walking at the end of this year.
Yeah,
that tells me that this organization. I mean, we know that Carlson's coming up on a new deal. We know Stone is coming up on a new deal. We've seen deals in the past with Ottawa that were purely monetarily based. Like for example, when they traded Robin Leonard to Buffalo and they got a first-round pick, which they ended up taking Colin White with, they had to dump David Legwand in the deal. They had to clear the salary. The Dion Phaneuf deal, they needed a defenseman. They wanted Phaneuf on the second pairing, but they needed to clear $9.5 million. The Leafs took on more salary than Phaneuf's $7 million. The deal with the Rangers, the Zibanejad Brassard deal. Mm-hmm. Zibanejad was an RFA and was going to get paid more after the 1 year. Brassard had a front-loaded contract, and his money was going down.
Right.
That when it was traded, every single deal with the Senators has some.
But it didn't hurt the team.
It didn't hurt the team, but I think it's going to hurt the team in the long run, Russ, because what's coming up is Stone and Carlson. I mean, Carlson, they're going to have to pay if they don't pay him. The number of empty seats will increase at Canadian Tire Center. My thing is with this deal is that Ottawa clearly is just pushing things 1 year down the road before they have to make a decision, because more than likely they were going to walk away or trade Turris just for whatever they could get at the deadline. Here they get a guy and they move 1 year down the road. But more than likely, unless Duchene really loves it in Ottawa, they're going to move him next year or walk away from him.
All right, I got to stop you now. Now you've got too much caffeine in you. All right, here's the deal. So first off, I don't know why, but the last 3 years, minutes have been dropping for Matt Duchene in Colorado, and maybe it's the new coach. And shots have dropped a lot too. When he scored 30 goals, he had 200 shots. Last year he had 160. This year he's got 23, and he's only got 4 goals.
Well, remember, he had 1 goal in 25 games at the end of the year, and that was when it looked like he was going to get traded. So they may have played McKinnon and other guys more.
Yeah, it seems like they did. But this year is the lowest amount of minutes. This year he's only playing 15 minutes a game, where he's played as much as 20 on average in his career. Normally 18-something is his average. He's well under his average. He's also been a faceoff shark the last 3 years. 57.9 3 years ago, 62.6 last year, 56.5 this year. So he is a great faceoff guy. I mean, in this day and age for the NHL, like for a second-line center, that's a really good faceoff guy. And I'm assuming they keep him at second. Maybe they'll put him at first. I don't know.
They have to put him at first because Turris was their number 1 center. That's the thing.
They don't have to. They could put Brassard still at first. Like, we don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. They probably will put him number 1. He's also from Halliburton, so he may bring some people in the seats as far as being a local guy. And so I think you got to slow it down a little bit for Ottawa, and let's see if he does sign a friendly deal like Shattenkirk signed a friendly deal for the Rangers.
Well, okay. Duchene cannot start negotiating with the Senators until next July. Right now, if you look at them for next year, Stone is an RFA, and so is Cody Ceci and Frederick Claesson. Claesson, not that big of a consideration. Ceci is going to probably ask for big money, probably in the neighborhood of $4.5 to $5 million a year. Stone has been a consistent scorer for them. He's going to ask for big money. With the year after, Duchene, Brassard, and most importantly, Carlson are all up as UFAs. So what this tells me is that the days of Bobby Ryan and or Dion Phaneuf in Ottawa may be numbered, because there's no way that Eugene Melnyk is going to pay all these guys without clearing out other salaries.
But they are going to get more revenue from that outdoor game, home game,
than they would from
the regular home game. But it doesn't matter. If you make an extra $2 million on that game, that helps you get another player.
And I don't know if they make the extra.
Yeah, they do. They make most teams make between $1.5 million and $3 million on an NHL home game.
Yeah,
most teams.
Yeah, that'll
really
get
closer to 2 to 3.
That'll get buried in Eugene's bank account in the Caymans.
I don't think so, because
it's not gonna get spent on the Sens, because they never spend it on the Sens.
Well, we'll see. But TD Bank Place seats 24,000, and if the average ticket price is something around $125, they're gonna make more than the average home game. They're gonna make double it.
And we had somebody in the comments that said, of course, Mike making negative comments about Ottawa. I call them as I see them, folks. Honestly, I mean, I thought this team was going to be last place in the NHL last year. They got to within a goal of the Stanley Cup final, and I still am critical of them, because I don't like the way they run their organization. They're this close, and what they should have probably done is made the trade for Duchene, trade a prospect, and if you have Duchene and Turris as your 1 and 2, you have a legitimate chance at winning the Stanley Cup. I don't think they've improved their chances markedly from what they had with Turris to think that they're any better of a team. So that's where I don't get it. But okay, we'll see. Okay, let's look at some of the games from last night. Now, I only caught highlights of the Rangers game against the Blue Jackets. Now, the Blue Jackets led early, and the Rangers came back mostly on their power play. Russ Shattenkirk has been really stepping it up, I'd say, the last week and a half to 2 weeks. His offense is really kicking in. He's got, I think, 5 goals and 10 assists now. Yeah.
He's got a 5-game point streak where he's got like 7 points, I think. Here's the thing. Again, there needed to be a settling in process of the defense. We've talked about it. And Brendan Smith is the odd man out. I am not shocked about this. You knew I was against that contract because I felt like the window was too small and he wasn't what they thought he was. So now with him not playing, they're playing better. That's one thing. Now, Shattenkirk, like I've always told you, is a weapon on the power play and a weapon 3-on-3. And he showed that last night. He makes their power play great. This is the best Ranger power play in years. It really is. Even fans are a little dumbfounded how good it is, but that's what you expect from Kevin Shattenkirk. That's why I never backed off even this season saying the offense was not the problem. Okay. Getting to the Columbus part of it. Now, it was fun. Sonny Milano got to play at MSG, and for any kid growing up in Massapequa, like I did, although it's North Massapequa, but I'm not going into that whole thing. But it was fun for him. Now, he did have a cracked tooth when he did the interview. He cracked his tooth during the game, so that was pretty cool. It was a real hockey moment for him. Tortorella was very frustrated with his team because they had the lead. Bobrovsky was playing great, but they had no discipline. And what's his name? David Savard, one of those penalties was an offensive zone penalty. You can't do that late. You can't do that in a tight game at all. Offensive zone penalties for a defenseman is like a big no-no. So
cardinal sin, yeah.
Yeah, it's a cardinal sin. And so that really helped the Rangers get back in that game. Yes, the Rangers won that game because of their power play and the lack of discipline with Columbus, because Bob was playing great. It had nothing to do with him. And Lundqvist was playing okay. He wasn't bad. He wasn't great, but he made the saves he had to make. And that's what I always contend to people. If the defense is around there to steer the puck away, he still will make that great first save, but he's not always going to smother it, and he's not always going to glove it now. So it was a good game. It was a game that, Shattenkirk really showed his worth. Zibanejad looked good again. In the chat room, they're asking me, do I think he's a number one? I do. And you remember when that trade was made, I was very high on the deal and felt like he just needed more responsibility because he wasn't getting it in Ottawa. And I've tracked him really his whole career. I watched him in the AHL. I've really, ever since he had that golden goal in the World Juniors, I've really kept an eye on him.
he's got the size to be a number one. That's one of the important things. I mean, he's got this. He's a good skater for his size, but he's a big body. So I mean, that he can withstand the challenges of being a number one center. I mean, the one other thing I noticed about this is that Grabner's starting to score. He's got 7 goals now.
Grabner's playing a little more physical. I think somebody must have challenged him saying, look, it's great that you had all these goals last year, but you're a bigger guy.
Yeah.
He is a pretty strong guy. Like, I've interviewed Michael Grabner. He's well put together.
Yeah.
He played greasier than we're used to seeing him play yesterday. And that, I think, is getting him his goals, because he's not going to get a breakaway goal every time he has a breakaway, right? It's just not going to happen.
Now, and Buchnevich's ice time was being limited earlier in the year. Now he's got 6. Which is, that pretty
limited. He's still on the 4th line. It's still crazy. He is on pace for like 63 points, and Rick Nash is on pace for 30. Nobody's given Pavel Buchnevich a silver stick.
Which
look, Rick Nash earned that. I'm not making light of that.
Which means with a veteran coach that he doesn't trust him defensively. This is sort of like Babcock, and we'll get to the Leafs in a minute, but it's sort of like Babcock playing Mitch Marner on the 4th line. Sometimes it's line matchups. They want to get him matched up against other 4th lines and see if that works for them in terms of being a benefit. But in other situations, it's coaches not trusting the player defensively and going that direction with them.
Yeah, he's averaging a little bit more ice time than last year, 2 minutes a game, but he does play more power play than last year. And right now he's got 4 power play points, 3 power play goals. So that's good. I mean, that's, at least they're utilizing him that way. He really should be used more, though. I would put him at least on the 3rd line, but whatever. I mean, at some point, I think that'll change. But right now, with things in flux. Here's the other thing, and we've talked about it. The unsung hero on this team is JT Miller. He's probably been the unsung hero for the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. But his contract is up. He's going to get a nice contract. Because, again, he is on pace to break his own personal scoring record again. And this is a guy who I still think should be playing in the middle. I think the answer is there all along, and I think just let him play center and let him just, stay there at center. It's just like if they put him there, they don't let him stay there. You know what his faceoff percentage is this year? 61.
Jesus.
I mean, that's really good.
He's going to probably get about half of what Nash is. Half of the 7.8 million that drops off with Nash leaving as a UFA. So.
I mean, last year was a great year. He had 56 points. Right now, he's got 15 points in 16 games. Like, he is their most physical player. He is the guy that scores tough goals, and he is the guy that really gets the least amount of press for it.
Ideally for the Rangers next year, not to say they're going to pay JT Miller $7 million, but ideally Miller's contract would be, in the $6 million range, and if they wanted to re-sign Nash, it would be closer to what Miller's making right now, which is under 3. But I don't think Rick Nash is going to take that from the Rangers. Yeah, I think he's going to go someplace else and probably, go the veteran route and take a 1 or 2 year deal, because I think he's going to want a multi-year deal from the Rangers.
Yeah, he is going to want a multi-year deal, and he deserves it. Hey, people are saying Buchnevich was on the 1st line last night. I didn't notice that. If that's the case, I had the game on with no volume, so whatever. If that's something I missed, but I'm telling you, he still has played a lot of 4th line this year.
Now off the ice, in terms of transactions yesterday, there were a few notable ones. We'll get back to the games in a second, but I wanted to go in this direction because one of them was the Rangers, the Russian defenseman Barry Glazov that we talked about during the offseason. He goes back to the KHL, and Kaylor Yamamoto and Owen Tippett, 2 rookie players, who showed something early on. Yamamoto gets sent back to his team in the WHL. Owen Tippett goes back to Mississauga of the OHL. Not surprising, Russ. I mean, nine games. I mean, I think the only ones who are not going to, what is it? Is it just Hischier and Patrick right now after these 2 go back? I think it is.
Yeah, I think.
I'll double check while you're, but what did you think of Tippett and Yamamoto?
I think with Yamamoto, Look, I think he's capable of staying in the NHL, but I think with the problems that they're having, it's best to send him back and not let him have to experience a team that's struggling, that's not supposed to be struggling. So I think that makes sense. Now with Tippett, I think there's a lot of other things at play. And so, yeah, I think when you look at it, you say, well, he does have that goal scoring ability. He does have the size, but Florida's not really going anywhere. And so why not let Tippett go back? Why start his deal now when he's not going to make you a playoff team this year? Let him go back and still hone his craft. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. So after those two were sent, it's just Hischier and Patrick.
And we don't know. Like, Patrick hasn't been back yet.
Right. And it's very possible. Very possible he could go back. I mean, there have been
very possible he could go back. People in Philadelphia don't want to talk about it, don't want to think about it, but it's very possible he could go back too.
Guys like Sheedle and Formanton stayed for a few games, but
yeah.
So these two were the only ones. Now
Sheedle could be, he could be back because he's in the AHL. If he gets hot and there's an injury, he certainly could be back up. And Formanton had his little taste. That's good, but that was also due to injury, so they probably let him stay because he was playing so well. Again, teams are just sort of letting these guys whet their appetites. I have no problem with it.
Yeah. Now the game I was at, the Maple Leafs and the Vegas Golden Knights, 4-3 shootout victory for the Leafs, breaking a 2-game losing streak. Mitch Marner with the only goal in overtime and in the shootout. Frederik Andersen stopped all 3 shootout opportunities for Vegas. Little criticism after the game regarding Andersen and the goal that he let in late in the third period from not exactly the greatest offensive player in the world, Derek Engelland, who picked the blocker side top corner on Andersen. I thought, looking at the replay, that Bozak's stick got sort of distracted. That's sort of the Don Cherry thing. He's always railing about the defender getting his stick in front of the shot and distracting the goalie. I thought there was a little bit of that, but there is a little bit of criticism, Russ, and this is the thing. Andersen, in most of his career with Anaheim, he was battling either Jonas Hiller or later John Gibson, and at times both of them, for playing time. He's been the man in Toronto for now a year and a quarter. I thought after a bad opening month last year that he played pretty well throughout the season and played pretty well in the playoffs. Not phenomenal, not Carey Price stand on your head, but good. This year, October, same problems. He played a couple good games during the recent road trip. Last night, okay, but that goal, there's always one sort of smelly one. But more than that, it was an adventure with the puck. He handled the puck badly a couple times. The puck came off the boards, went through his pads, almost went into the net. In overtime, he comes out on a partial breakaway, clears the puck. The Vegas player gets it and shoots it wide of the open net and just misses. So there's some thought. I was listening to one of the Toronto radio shows this morning that maybe Andersen needs a goaltender to push him a little bit to get the better performance out of him. Some goalies are like that, but they have Curtis McElhinney as their backup, and I don't think Curtis McElhinney is going to push him. If it is somebody to push him, I think it's going to be the guy that they picked up from Vegas, which is Calvin Pickard. Do you buy into that sort of scenario?
I do. I do think Anderson's played too much. I do think that last goal, I don't think was his fault, though. I think not challenging any shooter, even if it's Derek Engelland, is going to get you in trouble. And so I think they got in trouble. And, yeah, last minute, Bozak sort of sheepishly put the stick in there. But, again, I think he was already wound up at the time, and the shot was already getting ready to go. So you can't be that lax on defense when you have a lead against a team that you can beat.
Yeah.
And that was a team where, look, that Matthews goal was amazing. He was like a turnstile scoring that goal in the crease. I don't even know how a human does that.
Well, JVR scored the goal, but yeah, he did the spinorama that was unbelievable. Yeah, and
Matthews did Matthews have one?
No, that was he did this. He did the rush, the spinorama.
But JVR got the goal. Okay.
JVR got the rebound right in the crease.
Yeah. But that was a great move, and Kadri was a great move on his goal.
Yes. Yeah. But that was the thing, and that was the concern though. They
had the momentum and they gave it up.
They got a 3-1 lead after one. They had a goal that was Vegas scored late in the second to make it 3-2. Sort of, the second period was dreadful. Was basically like chess.
Yeah.
No chances whatsoever until late, and then Vegas got that goal to make it 3-2. The Leafs had a goal called off because JVR had batted it with a high stick before I think Bozak had scored the goal. So I mean, there were chances there, and this is again the concern. Opportunities given, and you can't say Vegas is not a good team because they're playing with a lot of effort. They have some talented forwards. Their goaltending, I mean, Lagasse, he's a fourth string goaltender. They're getting, and his goals against is over 4. So basically, you're getting what you're getting out of them. But let's just say this: they're one of many teams who I think maybe underestimated Vegas a little bit. And
I was one of them. But again, the season's not over either.
Yeah, no, and right, it's gonna be now. I need to go into this because I heard it and I was a little sort of dumbfounded by it. In response or in the wake of the Duchene deal, I saw some commentary last night in between periods regarding Neal, who's leading Vegas Golden Knights in scoring, and I'm not the first person who has said, a player who's a UFA, trade him, get value for him, and then re-sign him in the summer. And I think that Vegas may do that with some of their players, but we're 15 games into the season, and I saw commentators say they should trade him right now based on what Colorado got for Duchene. They could get a similar package. I'm sorry, you're not getting a similar package for James Neal that you got for Matt Duchene. There's no way.
No, there's no way. No way. It's not going to happen. And look, I think right now it's just an easy thing to say, hey, this would be a good fix. But why in the world would I give that much up for a 30-something-year-old guy? What is he, 32?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's nice that he's energized and playing great this year. I still think the haul for him, when they do decide to trade him, won't be as great as people think it's going to.
He's singing for his supper right now. He's trying to get a new deal for next year, and more than likely, he's going to probably end up for Vegas getting them maybe a low first and a prospect.
Yeah.
And then if they want to re-sign him, great. I mean, that's, the Sabres did that with Matt Molson, not the best example, but but you can do that. Keith Tkachuk happened back in the day, that works, but he's an asset. But I'm just saying that right now, 16 games into the season, trading James Neal just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
just going through a few other games. The Bruins win 5-3 over the Minnesota Wild. Bruins were without David Krejci, who's on injured reserve. Shock. And Brad Marchand. Now, Marchand may be out for just the one game, but there's a little question of the severity of his injury and how long he may be out. The Bruins got goals from 5 different players, Vetrano, Corrali. I mean, they're getting contribution from throughout the lineup, which they're going to need to do with those two key players out. I just don't know how long they can do that, Russ, because Marchand and Pasternak sort of drive that team, and if you're without arguably their number 2 center behind Bergeron and Marchand, who's probably their best or second best sniper, it's gonna be tough to win consistently.
Yeah, clearly, Dubnyk wasn't up to the task for sure. Not his best game. Stalock had to come in, and they eventually pulled Dubnyk. Jake DeBrusk's 3 goals. If you remember, I had a list of players that I thought would make the team this year, and Jake DeBrusk was one of them. He's doing well. Now, for all the people that ripped the Bruins for that draft for the 3 guys in a row, well, Jake DeBrusk is playing, and he's got 3 goals. So,
and Zach,
take a little, take your foot off their throat a little bit, because that's looking very positive.
Well, I mean, and Zach Senyshyn is a good prospect. I mean, Zaboral was up in the air. I think the main criticism of the Bruins because of those 3 picks was they got 2 of those picks to trade to get somebody, and they didn't get them.
Right.
They tried to trade up to get into the top 5 to get Noah Hannafin. At least that was the report, and they weren't able to, so they sort of got stuck with 3 picks. It's not bad to get stuck with 3 picks if you get good players out of them. So we'll see a couple years down the road whether they do.
DeBrusk is helping, and that's good. I'm happy for him, and that makes me look okay. And I did an article where I put him as a guy that's gonna, play in the NHL this year. So, but if it's funny. If we go back to, like, we just went through all the guys, and we're literally down to 2 guys from the draft actually sticking in the NHL this year. Because when someone says, hey, how many guys are going to play in the NHL this year from a draft, I don't usually count the quick look-see. I don't. Because any team could do that at any time with a player, right? Bring him up for a cup of coffee, bring him back. Doesn't mean he's NHL ready. But if you remember what I said from that draft, was probably 2 or 3 guys.
Yeah.
Right now it's 2. Maybe by the end of the season it's 3, or maybe it's back to 1. But I mean, I didn't think it would be a lot. And that is the way it is. But
it doesn't mean that a couple years down the road that this won't be looked upon as a really good draft. It just I think
it just means that teams are wanting guys to get more games. I mean, it's really important for, like, a defenseman to get in a lot of games before they play in the NHL. And you can see why. It's a tough position. It really is.
I think you probably need to play a couple seasons in the American Hockey League or in the SHL or in the Finnish or in the SM Liga or the KHL. You can't come. Very rarely do you have an Aaron Ekblad that comes in at 18 years old because he was a bull. I mean, he's 6'4". He could withstand the beating.
Or even a Will Butcher out of college, because it's not a ton of games to be played. Now, where Butcher probably had a little edge is he did play a fair amount of international games and tournament games. Right. And so even though the volume of games weren't there, the quality of them were, so it worked out for him. But a lot of guys need, there are organizations, they'll never tell you the number, but as far as, like, defensemen go, you need like a couple 100 games before you get to the NHL. And if you play, 3 seasons in junior hockey and like 1 season in the AHL, you're playing more than that. If you play 3 college seasons and you're playing an AHL season, you're not playing more than that. So it really takes a great talent to make it before that. Because if you go and look at it, I can't really think of guys other than Will Butcher that really have made the jump without playing a lot of games on defense.
True. The Capitals beat the Arizona Coyotes.
McAvoy is the other one. Someone pointed out, and it's true. McAvoy, again, played a lot of international play, and it is working out for him. But he's exceptional too. He really is.
I believe Arizona now is 2-13-1. John Carlson scores the winner in overtime in this game. Notable here, Alex Ovechkin with his 12th goal of the season, Clayton Keller with his 11th goal of the season, which, he's right up there with Ovechkin, which is, Russ.
I called him a superstar. People looked at me like, really? You really? I mean, I don't use that term lightly. I don't use it a lot.
Nope. No, I mean, you've been saying it for a couple years, and I mean,
I really think he's a superstar, and that's why I think he will win the Calder. And I don't think, but I jokingly say, hey, it makes me look good that I picked him preseason for the Calder. I don't think it was that hard to pick.
No, I mean,
it really wasn't.
No, I mean,
I'm not giving myself that much credit. No, I'm not. I know.
The other interesting thing here, Scott Wedgwood, 37 saves for the Coyotes. In the absence of, now Louis Domingue, now being sent down to the American Hockey League, and Ranta getting grabbing the number 1 job. I mean, Wedgwood may have a chance here to grab a number 1 job in Arizona. He's going to be shell shocked at the end of the year because he faces so many shots, but it's good for him to get the opportunity.
Here's the thing, though. Here's what we have to look at, though, and that was a game where I saw it was tied up, and I didn't think they would win in overtime. They didn't. So they get their, obligatory loser point. I don't like it's not, and I'm not taking that out on the Coyotes. That's just everybody. I hate the loser point. when you look at it now, they are 2-12-2. They have 6 points on the year. I mean, they're not as a colossal bust as Edmonton with only 9 points. That's a bust. Yeah. Right now, Edmonton is a colossal failure at their 9 points. But 6 points for the Coyotes, boy, I'm still dumbfounded, but I do think Wedgwood was a good pickup for them. Unfortunately, I think they're going to find out that Rantanen may not be the guy they think he is.
Yeah. Couple other games will just, acknowledge what happened. Jets win 4-1 over the Dallas Stars. Mark Scheifele with a couple goals. Red Wings 3-2 over the Canucks. Red Wings playing a little better than I thought. Yeah, a little better than I thought they were going to. I still don't see it when it comes to them in terms of being able to, I'd say contend for a playoff spot. But, they're hanging in there early on in the season, and, they get a good performance out of Jimmy Howard, who makes 26 saves. Now, talking about tonight, there's a few games on the schedule, more than a few. One of them is the Montreal Canadiens playing Vegas, second and back-to-back, which will be, it's challenging for any NHL team to play the second of back-to-back. And more than likely, unless there's some news that I didn't hear yesterday, because Donsk is still out, so is Subban, so is Fleury, and Lagasse played yesterday. Does that mean that Dylan Ferguson, the 19-year-old, gets his first NHL start at the Bell Center? I mean, that's a heck of a challenge. But the news here is on the other side. Carey Price was told to the media he was going to sit the weekend. He played, Montoya played against Winnipeg, and Charlie Lindgren, called up from Laval, gets a shutout against the Blackhawks, 38 saves, and now it's Charlie Lindgren playing against Vegas.
Yeah.
Now, he's being rewarded for the shutout, okay?
Yes.
But the overall concern here is, Russ, it was said that the lower body injury to Price was a knee.
Yeah. And we've talked about it. Like, he does have not great knees.
And this is the thing. It's like he missed most of the season a couple years ago because of lingering issues with the knee. Now, okay, maybe I'm being a little sensationalistic here, but you're going with the hot hand with your third string goaltender against a team that's going to be tired. So okay, maybe it's forgivable, but I think people in Montreal have a reason to be concerned here because they're saying this was just we're giving him a weekend off. Okay, well, you gave him the weekend off, and now you're giving him another game off. So how serious is this injury? Remember when
it's early in the season, so I think teams are more inclined to do this with a goalie that just because, like, you just don't want it to turn into anything. They can't afford to have it turn into anything. They will lose their entire season if he's out for any length of time. They will.
Okay, so there are 9 games on the schedule tonight. Capitals play the Buffalo Sabres, back-to-back nights for them. The Sabres are 4-8-2 right now. Still a lot of head-scratching in Buffalo regarding the Sabres. I mean, Phil Housley, I'm not blaming him because he's a rookie coach, but I think he's been sort of dealt sort of a bad hand here with the team. There are a lot of injuries on defense, a lot of, to my mind, a lot of cluelessness, and he's not getting great goaltending out of Robin Lehner. Robin Lehner, him and Chad Johnson split duty against Dallas on the weekend. I mean, Lehner was only signed to a 1-year deal, Russ, and I think this team is going to be looking for a goaltender in the offseason.
Yeah, probably. I think you're right. I mean, they're going to have to do that, or it's going to slow down the whole process. And you can't put it all on Eichel. You can't.
Yeah,
it's a lot more than that. And the defense. Look, the defense and the goaltending both have to still get better.
Yeah. It gets easier for the Coyotes. They go from Washington to play the Pittsburgh Penguins. So the 2-12-2 Coyotes and second of back-to-back play the Penguins in Pittsburgh. The 4-8-1 Oilers, who we mentioned earlier, play at the Barclays against the Islanders, who are 8-5-1.
I will say this. I don't know if I was seeing pictures directly from Edmonton, but it looked like there's starting to be some empty seats in Edmonton, even though they're paid for. Like, they're 11th in attendance, but it does seem like people are not showing up as much lately because they're fed up.
Yeah, and I did hear, and I didn't see it, so I'm taking the word of the commentator that mentioned it. McDavid was sat at some point during the last game on the weekend. Now, that's not going to last, and maybe that's just being done for effect. I mean, the guy has been carrying that organization on its back since he was drafted. So, if he had a bad game, maybe he was sore, maybe something was going on. But
yeah, I mean, look, it's way bigger than the problem than Connor McDavid.
Yeah,
actually, yeah. You know what? The game that the Oilers got shut out by the Red Wings, I don't know at what point of the game this picture was taken from Sarah Krause at Global, but Global Edmonton. But there's a lot of empty seats, so it was a home game. Like, this is, you know what? If that happens a few more times, we may be starting to talk about Todd McClellan and his job.
Yeah, I mean, something's not right there, and
because the GM's going to have the longer rope here. Peter Chiarelli will have the longer rope because he has seemingly put a lot of things in place. This one is more on the players, I think.
Yeah, but don't you think the first move might be a trade? I mean, you've got
it could be, but I mean, you have to admit, we didn't think they were going to be a Stanley Cup team. But nobody thought they were going to be a 9-point team, Mike. Second from the bottom.
No, they're they're a top 5 pick in the draft right now. That's how bad they're doing.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's
people. If they end up getting a top 5 pick in the draft, people are going to scream. There's going to be screaming at that draft. I'm telling you.
There'll be laughter, but it's not funny. I mean, this organ, even with players that you've taken first overall who are not bad players, who are great players. I mean, Taylor Hall, being one of them. They have, only last year with McDavid having a full season and winning the Hart did they make the playoffs. There's something inherently wrong in that organization. They're still not getting anything
secondary scoring,
and from they're not getting contributions from deeper in they're getting contributions from first round picks from from Puljujarvi, from Yamamoto, from Puljujarvi for a little bit, Darnell Nurse, but deep in their drafts they're not getting anything. So anyway, other games, Panthers and Hurricanes. Panthers 4-7-2. I know that I saw that Luongo was back. The question is how long he'll be back before he gets re-injured again. I'm not hoping that, by the way. I'm just saying.
He played well the other night against the Rangers. I thought he was making some great stops, to be honest.
They need him to be in there for them to have a chance to make the playoffs. The Hurricanes are 4-5-3. Again, I still think
I watched Darling the other day. He's a little iffy.
Yeah, that's the question, and the ability to score consistently, and that's where I think they still need to make some acquisition, and they've got all those defensemen, so that might be a concern later. If they're close to a playoff spot, that they may need to tap into that reserve that they have.
I mean, Darling's got a .903 save percentage. In this era, that's awful.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing, though. But here's the thing. How has Cam Ward done this year? Because I don't have a good idea of that.
I know when Carolina was rolling through Toronto last week, Ward had played one game. They had played Darling all but one.
He started 3 games. He's got a .911 save percentage. I got to tell you something. This could be a situation where at some point, I mean, I'm trying to think, who is it? Martin Gerber got replaced by Cam Ward. Cam Ward could be replacing Scott Darling at some point again, and maybe bring his team on a run again. He's only 33. If he literally figured it out, we thought Ward was looking really awful a couple of years ago, but last year he looked better. Yeah. If he figured it out, he could steal that job back.
While I'm talking about this one, look up how many goals for the Hurricanes have right now. Probably, I'd say one of the better matchups of the night, the Preds.
You're going to have to just tell me. My phone's not telling me that.
Okay. No, it's not important.
Okay.
The Preds with new center Kyle Turris.
Yeah.
face the Blue Jackets, 9-5-1 Blue Jackets. So them playing second back-to-back, so that'll be a good matchup. As we said, the Golden Knights 9-4-1 against the Canadiens 6-8-1. Lindgren will start. The Canucks and the Flames renew Pacific Division hostilities.
Yeah.
And the Battle of California, the Ducks and the Kings on NBCSN.
That's a good game.
That's a very good game. The Kings have been unbelievable so far this year. The Ducks are 6-6-2, and that, you know what? That's an accomplishment with all the injuries they have. Right now, they're without Getzlaf, they're without Kessler, they're without Fowler. So them being 500 is a miracle.
Yeah.
So good show, Russ. We will.
Well, hang on. I got one more quickie thing. So I did want to talk quickly. You know, we did talk Colorado the other briefly, and I think we should talk about Mikko Rantanen for a minute, not because of what you were thinking, but because the game that I saw him have against the Flyers was pretty amazing. He's 12 points in 14 games on a mid-level team, right? I think that's fair to call them that. Now, the interesting thing is they've got him listed at 6'4", 211. Boy, if he's only 211, he is making the most out of his 211. Like, he is a scary player. He's got 5 goals in 14 games. He had 20 last year. He looks like he's on pace to get more than that this year. Maybe he gets 25, 30 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, this is a guy that is really hard to cover. Like, he could really take over a game and kill you in the shootout too. So I think not enough people talk about Mikko Rantanen, so I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah. While you were talking,
and I'm going to do an article on Sportsology about him. I forgot that.
There you go. While you were talking, I looked it up.
Yep.
Carolina is 30th in the NHL with 32 goals. The only team worse than them, the Edmonton Oilers. Yeah. So, I mean, again, that was a concern going in the season. You look at they're stockpiled on D. They added guys like Kruger. They Teravainen last year. Aho is a really good young player. So is Lindholm. Justin Williams. Jordan Staal. They have some good forwards. Other than Skinner, they really don't have a dynamic scorer. And that was
they have to. I think Aho will get his points. I saw Jordan Staal step into the action the other day and score a really great goal. What if Jordan Staal gets back to having 20-something goals?
Well, no doubt, but I'm just saying that I don't think they have enough.
I don't know about that.
So far
today.
So far they're not showing it, Russ. If they're 30th in the league, I mean, maybe it breaks free during the year. But I mean, right now, what I said earlier in the when we were talking about them during the year about them probably needing to add a scorer. I mean, they were supposedly over the summer one of the teams that was interested in Duchene, and that didn't happen. But I just think if they're going to make a concerted run at making the postseason, they're probably going to need to add scoring, and I don't know if they can do that.
But they should be getting more scoring out of Falk. He's only got 3 points in 12 games. That's not going to cut it. He's a guy who's capable of scoring goals. Maybe he will heat up.
Yeah.
Victor Rask had 3 goals. He could score a few more too. I mean,
he didn't have a good year last year, Rask.
I know, but he still had 16 goals.
Yeah, right. But I mean, well, let's just say he didn't make the progress that they thought he was going to when they signed him to the long-term contract. So
if he could get to 20 goals, and Jordan Staal had 16 last year, he's on pace for a little bit more. If he can get to 20 goals, if Falk wakes up a little bit, I think they still could have just enough offense, but that means their goaltending has to be fantastic, and it's not been.
Right. And I think what they can do to get that offense is, I mean, when you got Bean and Fleury and, in the Hannafin situation with the contract, I think they can maybe trade one of those young defensemen to get themselves a forward who can help them. So, I mean, I think that
could happen. Bean by next year will be on the Hurricanes, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And Fleury's playing in Charlotte right now. I mean,
he could be called up next year too.
Yeah. So,
or even late this year.
Yeah, exactly. Or if they trade somebody on the existing roster, he could be the guy to fill it in. So, okay, good show. We will be back tomorrow at some point. We will tweet out if and when. For Russ Cohen, I am Mike Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.